Good evening, councillors and staff, and welcome to our council meeting. Due to the COVID-19 situations and limits to gatherings put in place by the federal and state government, members of the public are not able to attend this meeting in person. However, our meetings are available via live stream and welcome to anyone viewing this broadcast. City staff are currently reviewing the guidelines released by state government regarding Phase 3 easing of restrictions and will provide further information via the city's website about access to future agenda forums and council meeting in coming days. The City of Swan disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for an approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until written notice of either an approval or the conditions which relate to it or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will be available and archived on the City's website after the meeting. Attendance apologies, Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, all councillors are present except for Councillor McNamara and Scanlon, both on leave of absence, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. No other apologies? Thank you. Declarations of financial and in proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality, Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, I've declared in financial interest in item C 3.1 and all exec managers have also will also be leaving the chamber when this matter comes up because they've also declared an interest, Mr Mayor. Councillor Congleton's declared a proximity interest in item 3.3, that's the proposed aged care development of Paradise Keys Belladura, and that's a proximity interest, as I said. Councillor Catalano's declared an impartiality interest in item 2.1, that's a petition request for 9 properties on Midland Oval redevelopment master plan to be assessed for their heritage value. Councillor Congleton's declared an impartiality interest in item 3.3, responsible authority report proposed stock feed mill on portion of lot 1780 Gaston Road, Bullsbrook. Councillor Catalano has declared an impartiality interest in item 3.6, adoption of the local planning policy POL LP 1.13 design review and terms of reference. Councillor Parry's declared an impartiality in item 3.1, provision of recruitment services for the CEO as he's previously been involved in labour hire tenders with some of the tenderers. Mr Coaton's declared an impartiality in item 3.3, proposed aged care development Paradise Keys Belladura, as his mother resides with Southern Cross Care. And Mr Mayor, you have declared an impartiality in item B 3.3, proposed stock feed grain mill, and impartiality in your business has an association with West Pork, which in turn have an association with the appliance nominee Palmer Limited as being part of the same conglomerate, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Any other declarations, councillors or staff? None. Public question time. In-person public question time has been suspended at this time and all questions were required to be submitted prior to meeting in writing. Answers to questions which were taken on notice. Questions taken on notice at the ordinary council meeting of the 6th of May from Mr Bob Ellsbury, Dave Glossop, Karen Mowat have been responded to in the agenda. Questions relating to reports contained in the agenda. Questions which due notice have been given, I have nil. Questions without due notice, I have nil. Other questions, there are questions from Mr Mark Richards, Mr Bob Ellsbury, Mr Dave Glossop, Ms Sass Jacobs, Ms Karen Mowat and Mr Bob Riku, and they have been responded to.
In part or in full?
In part or in full, that's correct. Questions without notice, I have nil. Public statement time has been suspended. Petitions, are there any petitions to be submitted by councillors on behalf of the members of the public? There are none. Thank you, councillors. Deputations. Councillors, you would have all received written deputations to this meeting prior to. Announcements from the presiding member. Councillors have already announced that the city staff were reviewing our regulations in regards to COVID-19 with a view of returning to some kind of normalcy with our meetings in coming weeks. Members' questions. 10.1, answers to questions which are taken on notice. I have nil. 10.2, questions for which due notice has been given. I have nil. 10.3, questions for which due notice has not been given. Any questions from members? None. Thank you. Item 11 is leave of absence, and Mr. CEO, we have a request from Councillor Scanlon. Are there any others?
That's the only new one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I need a move that leave be accepted. Move Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone opposed? Would have that carried. Confirmations of minutes. I need a resolution, councillors, for the confirmation of the minutes of the 6th of May. Do I move up? Move Councillor McCulloch, seconder. Councillor Zanino. Is anyone against? Declare those carried. Item 13 is any business left over from the previous meeting. I have nil. That takes us now into Part B, and the first item withdrawn is item 3.2, the proposed amendment to the Melbourne Springs Development Plan number 6 for lot 9295 Elmbridge Pathway, Ellenbrook, and a number of motions, and the first one is from Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. The item is item 3.2, proposed amendment to Melbourne Springs Development Plan number 6, lot number 9295 Elmbridge Parkway, Ellenbrook. That council vote option 3 to be the deciding factor the community have asked for. The reasons are, number 1, loss of potential for local commercial facilities to service the day-to-day needs of local residents. Number 2, will not meet the aim of livable neighbourhoods for Melbourne Springs to be a walkable neighbourhood with compatible mixed uses to reduce car dependence for access to employment, retail and community facilities. And number 3, the expectation of Melbourne Springs residents that this would be retained as a village centre with services and facilities for all users, including those with disabilities, and to foster a sense of community and local identity.
Secondary, Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? There is. Do you wish to debate it, Councillor? There is. Councillor Richardson, if you could open the debate.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Councillors, the community have submitted their objections online. We've had 326 objections to the development. The community have asked us to represent them to indicate that they would opt for option 3, and they've submitted their objections online. They've emailed councillors. You've all received a copy from various people in the community asking for the original development plan to not go ahead. They were promised this facility when they moved in 2006. The sign is still out the front stating that the village centre is advertised, and at this stage the developer has not come through with their promises. This section of Melbourne Springs requires some facilities to help service that particular area. Currently at the moment, for those living in Melbourne Springs, the closest they can go to get milk and bread would be the 7-Eleven. The fact that this is promised to those people who bought their dream box of land and houses means that they have now had to wait a significant amount of time. Now, the applicant was aware of the proposal for a district centre on the Broadway at the time, including the village centre and the proposal for Melbourne Springs in 2006. The applicant's current submission states that due to the low to medium density nature of residential development in this area, there is not sufficient population within the catchment to viably support retail development at both the district centre and Melbourne Springs village centre. We were given 2-by-8-page pamphlets for Melbourne Springs residents, which they still have. Both of those pamphlets show both the Melbourne Springs village centre and the district centre. From the beginning, those residents were told that each village in Ellenbrook had its own village centre. Wood Lakes, the Bridges, Coolamon, Morganfields, Henley Brook and Charlotte's Vineyard were all villages that were built before Melbourne Springs, and they all have a village centre. On the pamphlet, it has under village centre local shopping, primary and or secondary schools, community centres, medical and dental facilities and a public library. They didn't get a primary school in Melbourne Springs until 2012. And as I've said, the sign that is still outside across the road still states future village centre. So for those driving past and those coming into the area, they still believe they are going to get those facilities. To say that after 14 years there's no market for the village centre under the development plan is wrong, and many people haven't been there that long. So what about those that have recently bought a house and are still, again, thinking that those facilities are going to come? We want a livable, sustainable neighbourhood to live in, and that means the option of being able to go down to your local deli, IGA, to be able to access basic amenities like milk and bread. Otherwise, those residents are forced to go to a service station and pay higher prices than would be normal. For children to be able to go to the shopping centre instead of riding their bike to the 7-Eleven, which is quite a distance. The village centre would complete their village, and residents supposed to be living in a master plan award-winning community are without those services currently. So, councillors, I'd ask you tonight, please, to look at the objections of the community, those submissions that were given, and ask that you refuse the proposal and opt for option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kiley is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you. Just see where I'm at here. Sorry, councillors. Councillors, how often do we get 326 objections to an issue? We don't get that very often, and this proposal was advertised within 500 metres distance of the said area, and we've ended up with 326 objections to it, and not very many. 334 submissions in total with 326 objections. So this is probably one of the biggest issues that's come before council in a long time. So although it seems quite mild and straightforward, this is certainly affecting the neighbourhood, and people are very concerned about what will happen to the area that they bought into on the promise. It probably is a promise. You could probably refer to it that, for promise that there would be development of a small shopping centre area on that site, and that's just not going to happen. What concerns me greatly, councillors, is that the nature of retail is changing with the COVID crisis. We don't know whether the need for small shops or a little centre there might grow in the future, or might be come about as a result of COVID. Certainly, the population is ageing, and when you think of the area is on the top of a hill, the expectation, if this goes through, is that people who live on the top of the hill who are ageing will have to go down the hill, and it's quite a steep hill too, councillors, if you've been to the site. I don't know how they're going to get there in the future. Whether you're walking or riding a bike, it's still quite a steep hill to get up and down. And if you're in the future, if you're in a Gopher and you want to just go down and get some bread and milk, that might be quite difficult, especially given on the basis that you were promised a small centre there when you purchased into it. And when you multiply 326 applicants or objections by the value of their house that they purchased or the investment they made in Melbourne Springs, you will see that that's quite a sizable amount. 326 people by, I don't know, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000. That's a lot of money that people have invested into the area on the expectation that they would get this centre. Another thing that concerns me is that Robert Stay is also the proponent for and the applicant for the Ellenbrook District Centre. So on the one hand, they said that you would get, I think it was in 2007, 2006, the structure plan got approved for Melbourne Springs, including this centre, and a year later they've put in another application and got approved, the Ellenbrook District Centre. So on the one hand, you've got the same applicant saying we want to have this big centre, but we want to get rid of the small centre. So, but you've already made the promise to the community that you've got this smaller centre going in at the top of the hill at Melbourne Springs. But obviously, the competition, they potentially don't want the competition, and therefore might want to remove that. Councillors, this is just not the time, due to the COVID crisis, just not the time to be closing down this opportunity for the future, because as I said, the nature of retail is changing. We might want that centre developed in the future, or somebody might want to go in there and build something more appropriate. I could certainly imagine a small coffee shop or a corner shop or the like, maybe with a tower, because it's just a fantastic view from that side. If they had a little tower above a coffee shop or something where people could go into, walk up the tower and overlook the ranges, that would be a great little addition to the area. Probably become too popular if they did something like that. This proposal would remove the walkable the requirement of livable neighbourhoods for it to be a walkable community. And I think a lot of people, it's a lovely neighbourhood. It's beautiful trees, it's beautiful houses, a great neighbourhood.
1 minute, Councillor.
Sorry?
Yeah, 1 minute.
It's a great neighbourhood with a primary school. People have invested into the area on the promise that this should go ahead. I have no objection, once this COVID crisis dies down in maybe a year or two, for this application to come back before council and have a look at it then. But I just don't think this is the time. I think we should reject it, refuse it, and see how things play out. But I think we haven't even got the development that the Ellenbrook District Centre was hoping for. We haven't got the Woolworths. I don't believe there's anything there. Councillor Richardson might be able to elaborate on that, what might be actually on the site, but I don't think there's anything there. I think this is just too early to take the promise away from the community, so I'm supporting Councillor Richardson's motion on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coley. Councillor Henderson is an objector.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I think actually we're all in fairly much furious agreement about the problem. And how do we deal with that problem is the issue. Now, there's no doubt that there's been a sign on that block for a long time that says residential / community village centre. So indeed, it's been put out there for quite some time that there could be some residential on that lot. Now, it might be that we can convince the WAPC to allow a portion of that land to be put aside for perhaps a coffee shop, hair salon, a small local store, that kind of thing. My problem is that the current motion goes to the WAPC. WAPC will simply bang, done. If we don't come up with a compromise that works, and I think we can still have a local store, not an IGA or the like, then we're going to lose this, and I don't want that for the community. The community actually want to see this work. And my discussions with the community up there is that my foreshadowed motion, if this fails, is an option that works for them. So, councillors, 326 objections, absolutely critical to what the community is thinking. The walking distance from the top end of Melbourne Springs down to the new shopping centre is nearly 4 kilometres, which is ridiculous if you want to talk about our community neighbourhood walking distances. So, if you think about it, if you had to walk down the hill, that's fine. Then you've got to stagger up the hill with your couple of litres of milk and your loaf of bread. So, if this was to go through without some change to incorporate local facilities. So I just simply say to us all that if we're going to make this work for the community, if we're going to have the WAPC consider where we're at, I'd ask you to consider my foreshadowed motion should this fail and get at least an outcome for the community that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Any further speakers? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm really standing because I wanted to congratulate the residents of Melbourne Springs on this amazing effort to get all these submissions in. And I did actually have a look through them and read them, and it just really shows that it really is a united community, and that they are actually standing by each other in their support for this village centre. And the main thing that I wanted to concentrate was that hasn't been mentioned so far is the traffic congestion that would result if you get more residential in the area. And I think that the idea for it to be the village, and that is the village space in terms of it being within walkable distance for all of those residents in that area. And I just want to make the point that actually there are actually more lots in that Melbourne Springs area than there were originally designed to be in that area. So there's actually quite a significant amount of people there. And there should be an opportunity for them to be able to walk to the shop and just have a coffee if there's a coffee shop there, and buy a loaf of bread and just buy the basics, particularly for the disabled, the elderly, for children, and for those incidentals. And the main thing is, why should it be walkable? Because really we do have to start thinking about sustainability. I mean, people jumping into their cars to go and buy a pint of milk is really not the way forward, and we need to really recognise that. I mean, that is the number one point in livable neighbourhoods. That's the number one aim, and we should be in this council supporting that and fostering that. So, you know, the aim is to provide services and facilities that allow users to walk to these village spaces, and that it is that for all users, not just for the able, but for also the disabled, for the young, the elderly. And the thing is that the big neighbourhood centre, whatever you call it, the big shopping centre down the road, it is 1 kilometre away. And I tell you what, in the summer, in the winter, actually pretty much most time of the year, 1 kilometre is a long way to walk when you've got a bag full of 2 bagfuls of shopping in each arm, or you've got kids and pushers, and that's what it's all about: offering people those services, those you know, a place where they can go and get the milk and the bread and you know, dozen eggs, so that they can actually feed the kids without having to get in the car every 5 minutes and go down there to the shop, to the supermarket down the road. And I just also wanted to finally point out that actually the reason why this village centre hasn't been developed up until now is because of the covenant, the restricted covenant over the area, because the centre part of Ellenbrook had to be developed first, and that put a restriction over the development in this area. So in fact it hasn't really even been given a go. So I think that right now we should support all of those people in Melbourne Springs, and once again I congratulate them, because that truly is a united community, and that is what we want to see from ratepayers and residents. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion? Any speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, having read the report and actually been to the site, I question whether changing the zoning at this time is the right way forward. Councillors, I think that what needs to be considered here is there any other way forward? And it seems to me that one realistic way forward, on which the report is silent, although the developer does state that there is no market for a village centre. The simple way to test if there is a market for a village centre is to put up a big for sale sign saying, for sale, plot of land suitable for village centre, or to auction it. And then we would find out if there was anybody out there actually interested in developing a village centre. I think just changing the zoning to residential without first trying that is not the right thing to do. So I actually believe there is potentially a market there. The market needs to be tested, and I'd like to see a for sale sign first. So that's why I'm supporting Councillor Richards' motion, which would retain the existing zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers? Okay, Councillors, just want to point out a few anomalies. First and foremost, this is a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The sign out the front for 14 years that says commercial or retail, and the restrictive covenants did not extend over this block. It was for the town centre. So any further speakers? Councillor Richardson, your right to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I just urge councillors to please opt for option 3 at this stage, and give those residents who have taken their time to ask the council to consider this, those amenities that they so desperately require, We've talked about livability, we've talked about sustainability and access to those who are disabled, those who have children, who need basic services. We would like to see those services introduced into that area, and I'm happy to accept any suggestions, such as Councillor Johnson's, that if we could look at re-advertising and also look at Councillor Henderson's options of small serviceability in terms of shops and facilities, that would be a positive step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 8 to 5. Motion's carried. Takes us now to item 3.3, the responsible authority report for proposed stock feed mill on a portion of lot 1780, number 46 Gaston Road, Bullsbrook. Councillor McCulloch.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 3.3, that the Council resolve to advise the Metro Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel that the Council of the City of Swan recommends that the application for a proposed stock feed grain mill on a portion of lot 1780 Gaston Road, Bullsbrook, be refused for the following reasons. It's considered that the proposed use of the land falls within the use class of industry general as defined by the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme number 17, and such use is a use not permitted within the general rural zoning applicable to the land. The proposed use is not considered to be a productive rural activity contributing to the economic base of the Bullsbrook locality, and the proposed use is not considered to be a compatible support service to meet the needs of the Bullsbrook rural community.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is anyone against? I'll hear your amendment.
My amendment would be to add another point, and the point would be the proposed development will prejudice investment in and the creation of jobs on industrial land specifically zoned for such development.
Move in a second. Do you agree to that?
No, Mr Mayor, it's irrelevant to the motion, and there's really nothing to substantiate that.
Councillor Henderson is a seconder? Okay. It's not acceptable to the move and second, so you would have to move a motion and get a second to that so then we can debate it.
I'm more than happy with the motion as it stands, Mayor. Thank you.
Is there anyone against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Councillors now move to item 3.6, which is the adoption of the local planning policy, policy LP 1.13, design review in terms of reference, and a motion for Councillor Catalano. Firstly.
Yes, thank you. My motion is to defer this item to a future ordinary meeting of Council, and record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is that more factual information needs to be provided to Council to properly compare the costs and the time taken for City staff to make an assessment for a two-storey. Now I just want to put development there, sorry, instead of multiple dwelling, two-storey development in accordance with the State Government Design WA, compared to the costs and time for the Design Review Panel to make an assessment for a two-storey development in accordance. So basically, just need to have that comparison as to the costs.
Okay,
and
can you just
time
continue to read your motion, please, Councillor?
in accordance with the Design WA assessment.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? No one against. Declare it carried. Item 4.1 is tree removal request for number 8 Jane Street, Guildford. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, my motion is that Council resolve to defer a decision on the tree outside number 8 James Street, Guildford, until the ordinary meeting of Council to be held on 26th of August 2020, and seek the opinion of the new owner. 2. Record the reasons for the deferral as being number 8 James Street, Guildford has recently been sold, as evidenced by the for sale sign with sold sticker outside the property. The officer's recommendation does not support removing the tree. The new owner may wish to retain the tree. There is a presumption against removing healthy street trees, and the house has been there since the 1920s, and the tree is at least 50 years old.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Is there anyone against? Councillor Kiley was the seconder. I saw your hand first, Councillor. Okay, there's no one against. Declare it carried. Councillors, that takes care of the items that have been drawn. Can I have a mover that those items not withdrawn be adopted? Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Lucas. Is there any against? Declare that carried. Councillor, that takes us to the confidential items. And Councillor, there are two items not withdrawn, which is C3.1 and 3.2. Can I have a mover that those be adopted?
You need to move to go behind closed doors, sorry.
Oh, okay, well, we can deal with these first, can't we?
Well,
Okay. Motion to go behind closed doors. Councillor Lucas, seconded Councillor Parry. Anyone against? Okay, we're now behind closed doors. Live streaming off.